we hear often, but very few people talk about what actually feels like to go through it. The confusion, the intensity, the unraveling of what you thought was real. Today's guest has lived that experience. I'm honored to welcome Brianna Myers. Brianna is a founder of Light and Breezy Coaching and the creator of the Awaken Your Potential method. Her journey into this work began after a near death experience in 2020, a complete moment that shifted how she saw herself, life, and what's possible. Since then, she has dedicated her life to helping others navigate spiritual awakening in a way that is not overwhelming, isolating, but grounded, supported, and integrated. Oh my gosh. She is a certified QHHT practitioner. Slow this down. Let's try this again. My prompter's going a little too fast. All right, let's try that again. Welcome, beautiful souls. Take a breath and arrive here. Spiritual awaken is a phrase we often hear, but very few people talk about what it actually feels like to go through it. The confusion, the intensity, the unraveling of what you thought was real. Today's guest has lived that experience. I'm honored to welcome Brianna Myers. Brianna is the founder of Light and Breezy Coaching and the creator of the Your Awaken Potential method. Her journey into this work began after a near death experience in 2020, a moment that completely shifted how she saw herself, life, and what's possible. Since then, she has dedicated her life to helping others navigate spiritual awakening in a way that is not overwhelming, isolating, but grounded, supported, and integrated. Integrated. She is a certified QHHT practitioner, a quantum healer, energy healer, a spiritual coach. Through her work, she guides people through experiences like past life regression, subconscious healing, nervous system recalibration, and energetic alignment. What makes Brianna's work unique is how she blends deeper spiritual concepts with practical understanding, helping people move out of survival mode into a life that feels aligned, balanced, and purposeful. This conversation is not about escaping reality. It's about understanding it more clearly. So as you listen, you may begin to recognize parts of your own journey, feel a little less alone in what you've experienced, and gain a clear sense of how to move forward. This is Beyond Transcendence with Andrew. Let's begin. Welcome to the show, Brianna.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. Brianna, your journey really began near 2020. Can you take us back to that moment and how it changed the direction of your life?
Absolutely. Um, I kind of say it started in 2020, but we're on this journey for a lifetime, right? We can't really timeline too much, but that particular day and event made me realize how much we are on a divine path. And so when I had my near death experience, I ended up contracting fungal pneumonia from wearing masks during COVID. And because it was during COVID, obviously it was a lot of craziness. And so they were testing me for COVID, but nothing else. And so I ended up collapsing in my home and was rushed to the emergency room and put in ICU immediately, and died for 6 minutes. And in that break, several things happened, and we won't get into the whole experience, but the main pillars that I realized was that we are not separate from one another. We are not separate from spirit. This is all this giant experience in this web of the quantum field. One of the things they showed me was my whole life on, I can only explain it as like a dome of like little images of all these things that had happened in my life and how they were all interconnected. And I had a very traumatic childhood and even young adults. Um, and how all of those experiences had brought me, and then over here in the dome was me laying in that hospital bed, and it was like I just watched this whole wave, to how I got to that exact moment. And in my soul contract they told me that I had given myself an exit clause because I knew that I was going to take on this life that was going to be incredibly painful and difficult, that I was a generational cycle breaker and that I came to change the trajectory of my lineage, and that when or if I decided to come back, that I would be heavily put on the spiritual journey where I then experienced massive downloads. I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. Um, Basically, I got shoved into what we call the spiritual awakening. But in that, I also was shown the collective in the same way, but how we are all interconnected, that I'm not separate from you, you're not separate from me, that every single, I call it the drop in the water, right? When we drop a little pebble in the water, it expands out, right? And everything that we do touches everyone else. I guess we could call it the butterfly effect, but it's even bigger than that. So that was a big one. And then I kind of tell people, I'm like, it's our life purpose. I get this a lot. I'm sure you do too, Andrew. The What's my life purpose? We think we're supposed to have this big grand, moment in our life, and it becomes very clear. But most of the people that I saw in that collective, or most of the souls that have come here, are quiet distributors of frequency. They do the small acts that ripple out into giant movements. So that's one thing I really work with clients on, is that we think that we should have this big moment, but it's honestly those quiet moments where you're just kind to someone, or you pick up the slack for someone when they're struggling, all those little things that create the biggest waves in our collective.
Wow. So when many people talk about spiritual awakening, but don't understand what it actually feels like. How would you describe the early stages of awakening from your own experience?
Um, it was horrifying. That's what a lot of people don't realize is, like, we think we're going to be standing on doing yoga on a mountainside, and it's all clear and it makes sense, but it's destruction. I talk a lot about Shiva. Shiva was a god of creation and destruction, and that's the balance of the duality. And a lot of people want the creation in this new beautiful world, but they don't expect the destruction and the breakdown of their old world. And that has to happen that way, because you can't build a foundation of a new world that you want to live in on the old foundation, right? And I always kind of talk about the teacup. If you have the teacup's full, you can't pour more into that cup, right? You have to throw it out and start over. And so, with me, my marriage fell apart. I had a farm at the time. I had sold that. I just went on this whole, like, deep, deep, deep rabbit hole, I guess you could call it. And I found some of the greatest spiritual coaches, and mentors and teachers. And it was like the universe just opened up and just brought me these people. And I've worked with people all over the world, Ireland, the Canary Islands, you know, Asia, Tibet, and I'm like, how did these people just come into my life and my existence? But that goes right back to how it's that drop of pebble, and it will unfold as it's supposed to, but you have to release what you've been fighting to hold on to, because it's not even what you want or who you really are. You think you wanted that, but that was built on the structure of who you were taught you were, right? uh, that doesn't that doesn't translate to who you truly are at a soul level.
Absolutely. I've learned my life was actually not my life. It was what my parents wanted. It was what outside forces wanted it, not what actually we wanted from within. Like as a child, we're told we can dream, but then when we actually dream, our parents tell us, no, that's just a pipe dream. That's never going to happen.
That's
And they shut
unrealistic.
down that dream.
Yep. Yeah, that's unrealistic. I hear that a lot, and that's one thing I love that you brought that up, because with a lot of my clients are like, well, what is my purpose? What is my passion? They don't know where to start. I'm like, well, if you don't know where you're going, best thing to do is start at the beginning. What did you love to do as a kid? What was your dream? What were you passionate about? Like for me, I I used to get asked that question a lot, and I was like, I don't know if I really did anything, but I had a very, very profound imaginary friend, and I spent all my days with that imaginary friend. This is actually a very fun story, and why I say this journey started way before, because I was being primed from childhood. But her name was Apple Pie, and I spent most of the time with her. I didn't talk a lot. Everyone in my life, even my family, thought I was stupid. Like they used to tell me, "Oh, she's kind of dumb." But I was observing. Like I used to love watching ant hills. I would sit in trees and just watch the leaves move, because I was still very connected to source, and all of these things were just very new. And I was watching systems. I realized that was what I was doing. I was watching how a system moved. Like I loved ant hills because it was like watching a little micro ecosystem. And fast forward now, when I went through my Kundalini awakening, for example, this is really fun. Apple pie actually came into one of my guided meditations, and I had sensed her like this fourth energy in my guides for the whole time. But she never came forward. And then she finally did. And she's like, I just needed you to know this wasn't some childhood delusion, right? Because I was very logic based prior to my 2020. I was turning my back on my spiritual journey because it was tied to emotional trauma. Um, and she was like, I needed you to know this was real and that you were doing these things because I, remote view and astral project. And so, yeah, so she's always been there, but that was what I did as a child. I was making structures. I was observing human nature, how people moved, emotions, and it all added up to now what I'm doing. I'm building structures, helping people find new ways in their awakening, how to restructure their life, build it the way that they actually feel aligned with. And yeah, I was observing that in childhood.
Wow. What are some of the common challenges people face when they start this journey? Like, you work with QHHT and past life regression. What have you seen people uncover through those experiences and that impacts their present life?
Yeah. Oh, so many, but that's a great question. My big one, and I actually just did a session yesterday where it came through so predominant of fear, the fear of change, the fear of blazing a new path. This is like how you said, this is what my parents wanted for me. And that trickles down from grandparents and, down the lineage. And so we all want to be included, right? We don't want to be the outsider. We don't want to be so taking that step opposes a risk that most people are afraid to disappoint their parents or society or the church or whatever structure they have around them, and that keeps them in that inauthentic energy. So it's really stepping into that unknown. And once you do, I have so many clients that have come to me very unsure about the next phase, and by the time they get to me, they've already exhausted their resources. Talk therapy, they've done the therapies, red lights, all that stuff. Um, so it's stepping into that unknown space and being like, just look from here. This is vantage point, and that's always my first thing with my clients. Like, why are we not stepping into that space, right? What's keeping you held back? And almost always it's fear based, and that's what I always tell people. I'm like, it's releasing the fear. And I tell people baby steps, right? Just don't try to dismantle your entire life. Now it's falling apart and it's on fire. I get that. But the reason why 90% of New Year's resolutions fall apart is because nobody has a strategy, right? They are like, I'm just gonna do this. It's a completely new thing, and they can do it for a few weeks because they can sustain it. But you need steps, you need action plans, and that goes for the awakening as well. You have to have support, you have to have a plan, um, and be honest. Like that's a big one. A lot of people want to lie to themselves. Be honest with yourself. Who are you really? Like, or I like to help people dismantle belief systems. Like, do you actually believe that? And then once you start asking why long enough, they like, no, I don't believe that. But it's so embedded in them, they think it's a belief until someone just asks questions and not pick at it. I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong. I just want to know where that belief system came from, you know?
It's 100%. Well, you talk about subconscious healing. So, how does one heal their subconscious?
Yes. So that's a big one. It's bringing the unseen to light. That's the most in the shell I could give you, but we all have a belief system that we don't even consciously know is there. Now, the subconscious, I'm a QHHT practitioner. Um, we store everything, not just from this lifetime, from all lifetimes in our subconscious, and we continue to put information in it all the time. Subconscious never shuts off. One big one that I work with a lot of people is, what are you listening to when you're sleeping? You know, we all know the people that like to listen to their murder documentaries because it's a soothing, right? Right. I was one of them for a long time. And then when I realized how much the subconscious is being programmed in those 8 hours of you sleeping, if you're lucky enough to get 8 hours of sleep, um, I'm like, you're putting all of that sadness, anger, hostility, and all of that energy into your subconscious, and then that fuels your conscious thoughts. So first thing I always do is listen to affirmations at night. If you're going to have anything on, and you might as well take advantage of it because your subconscious is always working. So what a beautiful way to have 8 hours of healing sessions when you're just not, you're sleeping, you're astral projecting in the dreamland, so that's when I always work with people, but it's really bringing what is unseen forward. I love to give this example because it's kind of fun. Um, for me, my she's 18 now. She's my daughter, 18. A couple of years ago, she pointed out to me that whenever I walk into a room, I click my tongue on the top of my mouth, go like that. I never noticed it my entire life until she pointed it out, and then I can't unnotice it. So those are the kind of things, our subconscious patterns that we do, and we don't even know why we're doing it. I don't know, you still don't know why I do that, but it's something there. And so it's bringing what's unseen to the forefront. And sometimes that can be scary for people because, they feel like they're getting picked apart, or, um, what are you going to discover about yourself? That's a big one. People, they say they want a discovery of themselves, but when it really comes down to pulling those layers back, they tend to be fearful of it because they have built a narrative, or society has built a narrative. And that's very human and okay. But if you really want true transformation, and that's where I work with people, I'm not a one-off, this healing session, is going to heal you today. No, it's true transformation and breaking down to the core of who you are, the belief system you built, and why you believe in it. And energy healing and quantum energy, QHHT, these are all tools to help you get there, but it's not the solution. You have to really start pulling the layers back.
So there's a lot of information online about spirituality that can feel confusing or extreme. How do people stay grounded while they're still exploring deeper awareness?
I love that question. So I always tell people, I'm like, this is a great way for you to tune into your intuition because if you feel, so I teach people about body mapping and how to sense in the body if something feels in alignment for them. If you feel like in the lower energy system, so your like root, sacral, solar plexus, that usually is telling you that that's not in alignment for you. But if you feel expansion in the heart chakra or the heart space and the throat, third eye, this area, and you just feel like, oh, that's a very big key that this is something for you. Now, there's many different journeys happening on earth, and we all have a different mission. So, what is true for me might not be true for your mission. And that's where we really need to learn discernment in the information we're taking off of the internet. Um, I always tell people, I'm like, find yourself a good mentor, a good coach, a good advocate that has integrity and authenticity, um, and learn from them, or I'm a truth seeker. That is actually what my soul label is. So I just love to hear people's journey, how they got to that conclusion, why do we believe that? And I've been picking apart systems my whole life. Just didn't know what I was doing. That goes back to that, childhood, or I was like, even religion, not that I'm totally pro spiritualism, but I felt in religion, I'm like, something doesn't add up here. I could feel it. I want it. I understand something here, but it's just not coming in together. Right. And so it's just finding what's true for you and your mission and, relieving the rest, so that's one of the big things I tell people on.
Powerful. So what begins to shift when someone moves into alignment with their true purpose?
Oh, yes. That kind of goes back into that expansion. You're going to feel this expansion around you, your energy systems. If you know much about energy systems, your etheric field, we'll just start with that one, is a 6 foot energetic bubble that's around you at all times. And I literally can feel my energy push into that etheric field when I start to do something that is in alignment for my soul mission. Um, but I also will feel like it feels like the walls are closing in, when you're doing something that is not in alignment with you. When I say yes to something, when I want to say no, or, I like feel that energy, and you start to really work with your energy fields and understand that they are always working in your favor. It's not only your guides and, angels, ancestors, your own energy system is also working with you to be in alignment for the soul mission. Um, I talk a lot about this with people about, we put too much into, the guides and the angels and the ancestors. Dowsing rods. Here's a great one. Dowsing rods, they come in, yes, out, no. That's actually picking up your energy system. You know what I mean? It's not guides and angels and ancestors. It's your own energy system conducting and coming into alignment from your higher self. So a lot of people think it's like, oh, the angels are telling me these answers. It's not. It's your energy system because it's working for you, and you just have to learn how to kind of work with it, if that makes sense. So you'll know what feels in alignment.
No, that makes sense. So for someone who's listening right now who feels like they're waking up but doesn't know what to do next, what is one step you would guide them to take?
Um, I would find a mentor first. So when I had my Kundalini awakening, I wasn't aware. I mean, I knew what it was. I just hadn't been taught like how it would come out. And for your listeners that don't know, I was sitting at my computer, very much like this. I was working, and I felt this like crack in my like lower spine, and all of a sudden this energy just whooshed over me, and I had like I thought sparks were gonna come out of my hands. It was that much energy. I was like shaking. And I ended up finding a shaman who helped me a lot and explained to me what was going on, helped me harness the energy. I didn't sleep for 30 days, not even kidding. Because every time I would like try to fall asleep, I would astral project. And so I realized that this is, them teaching me how to escape the body or to get out of the body. This is where remote viewing started. But that's how it came. And I had to find someone that knew more about what I was going through than I understood. And when you accept that the universe is always working in your favor, those people are going to come in. And that woman came in right at the time I needed her. And so, this is also the alignment, really understand that the universe is trying to work in your highest good always. This is in soul contracts, that they're here to help us have heaven on earth, but we get in our own way. So, really, really, lean on community, find people that are like minded, get rid of people that are negative in your life that are telling you that you're crazy or that this isn't, what you should be doing, because that's just the old paradigm trying to pull you back in. If your listeners know anything about the new earth, I talk about this. This is happening right now. We are shifting into the 5D from the 3D, and people that are going to souls that are going to stay in the 3D are going to soul grab. They're trying to keep some of us in the lower paradigms, the fear, the anger, the betrayal, the vision. This is why when I watch things come on the news, I'm like, guys, shut it off. That is just to divide us so that we are still in the illusion of separation. We're not separate. We are going together. Stay in the positive energy. Find yourself people that hold positive energy, because I think Tony Robbins talks about this proximity, right? You become what you're around. If you're around negative people, you're going to become negative with them, So find people that make you feel joy, happiness, love, because that's what we're all moving towards. Unconditional love. That's the end game, right?
Absolutely. So what I like to do at the end of the show is offer you a moment to like share one of your gifts, just to give the audience like a tool they can use, or if they want to reach out to you, like leave all your information, your links, explain that. But also, I like to leave it open for you to whether or not you want to share something with the audience.
Yeah, I think that the thing I like to share with people, and I almost always close any session, everything with this, is to remember we are not separate from one another. Whenever you meet someone, you called them into your reality. There is a reason that they're there, right? Any soul. So you either learning something from them or they're taking a lesson from you. Um, but leave it at that. Don't put so much weight in the meaning of, right? You're sometimes helping someone, sometimes you're receiving something. This is polarity, positive, negative. So remember that whatever you're leaving into the universe is a ripple effect. And I talked about that earlier. You're rippling into a huge effect. So come positive, bring love, even if they're hard to tolerate, just give them love because that might be exactly what they need in this time at their journey. So that's what I like to leave people with. If you are interested in learning more, I have books on Amazon. You can find all of this on my website at lightandbreezycoaching.com. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, mentor, all of my links and everything are on that website.
Beautifully said. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, Brianna, and I wish you nothing but continued success and much love to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for co-creating this experience with me.
Welcome. What a powerful and honest conversation. Brianna remind us that awakening is not about becoming something new. It is about remembering who we've always been. Her journey shows us that even the most intense experiences can become the doorway to clarity, purpose, alignment when we're willing to move through it with awareness. Maybe today you recognize something in your own journey. Maybe you felt validation for something you've been going through. Or maybe you were reminded that you're not lost. You're in transition. This path is not about rushing. It's about understanding and learning how to stay grounded while expanding. So as you step back into your life, take one slow breath and notice what feels clearer now than it did before. Until next time, remember you are the creator of your own story and your soul is the pen. Much love to you all.